Something we can get hung up on is, oh, you're just a flighty woman, and how are you going to have success if you don't change, you're changing your mind again.
Welcome to Motherhood Cadence with Candace. This week I'm talking to another Candace Dudley, all about burnout recovery, and making pivots in your life to develop the life that is ideal for you and your family. I hope you enjoy. Okay, so welcome.
Thank you.
I am glad to have you. So tell me a little bit about how you became a podcast mentor.
Sure. It was not something that I saw coming. I was a teacher for 13 years and had my own kids. I have 3 kids, and they were all back to back to back. And that was when I knew I needed to probably leave teaching and make a change. I was burnt out. I was exhausted each day. I liked teaching, but I didn't like that my own kids were getting my leftover pieces. So within there, I dabbled in network marketing, as lots of teachers do, because we're just grasping at straws of what can we do with our teaching degree? And really it's teach or nothing. So I did that, and it was a wellness community with other moms, and started running challenge groups and accountability groups. And so I had this nudge for about a year where I was like, I think I need to start a podcast, but doubt kept getting in the way. I'm boring. I don't have enough to say, and this and that. And it really just came down to, I wanted to provide the moms in my circle with free value. I wanted to serve them. And I felt like I had a story to share, in that I was feeling lonely as a mom, and I postpartum and things. And I didn't feel like someone was talking about my experience. And it felt taboo at the time to say, I love being a mom, but this is hard. And, that kind of thing. So I started my own podcast 4 years ago. It has vamped into lots of different things, but a main focus in podcasting and helping others do that, as well as entrepreneurship and highlighting other entrepreneurial stories. But that's kind of why and how I got into it. And, when you put that many reps into something, you notice, oh, I have skills now that other people don't have. I've figured a lot of things out, Google and all those things. And so I'm passionate about helping people speed that process up. The setup of a podcast can feel so daunting. It's like learning a new language with the tech and everything. And so I love to make that quick. Yeah, I like to make that quick and easy for people. And just the whole production and editing and all the skills that could go into a whole one podcast episode are it's just crazy. So when I looked back and I was trying to figure out what am I going to do, I've left teaching now 3 years ago and made a bunch of pivots. What I realized was podcasting was the thing that never left me. It didn't, through burnout, through highs, through lows, through different things. At one point I was flipping furniture. There were a lot of really crazy things and a lot of pivots, but I always kept my podcast, and that was always fun to me. And it was always my thing that I just really enjoyed. And that became really evident. And so I just leaned into it. I just followed the nudge, and it's been really rewarding and great to help other people have a voice through their own podcasts and guest on podcasts, and just be able to help with all that.
I love that. And, I think I commented on your thread, and then I was like, I have a YouTube channel that I would like to turn into a podcast, but all those things that you just said are things that have kept me from doing it. And my husband's like, well, you could have a podcast, then you don't have to be on camera. And I'm like, it's so much easier for me to just set up the camera and go and upload it to YouTube than it is for me to figure out, how do I isolate the sound? How do I make it? Because you want sound to be good on YouTube, but it has to be good on a podcast.
Right.
And I was listening yesterday to a podcast that I found great value in, but there were certain moments where I was like, this needs so much better sound. And it's such a high production podcast that I was like, if they can't do it, neither can I, So I love what you're doing. But I also, so as a coach, I also want to offer a lot of free value, which my business coaches are like, you can't just give away as much as you can, but you also have to have, you have to be paid for what you do. And I'm a trained therapist. And so they're like, you have all this education and experience. And I was like, great, I have my program, but I also need things to be accessible. And so YouTube is how I do that. But I work a lot with moms who are burnt out. So for moms that might not know if that's the stage they're in, how did you know you were burnt out at that point when you were a teacher?
Things that I was really excited and passionate about, I wasn't anymore. found things like I was really locked in on exercise and movement and all that because that's what kind of brought me back to life after my postpartum journey, or that was part of it. And I found that to be super hard and it never was before. So things that were easy and things that I love to do and were passionate about, I didn't have that anymore. Lots of doom scrolling, lots of avoidance things like I was big into personal development books. I still am, but I veered like super far away from all of those things and was like just consuming books for fun, which is great, but I noticed that it was also an avoidance tactic, just like a doom scroll and things. So those types of things came to light. I also had like physical symptoms, like I was super anxious. I even went on a medication for a little bit because of it. I think I had adrenal fatigue. Like I had actual physical symptoms where I was super tired and I was downing caffeine like a pre-workout or like, an energy drink, just even when I wasn't working out, just to kind of like get through my days. And so it just was a season that I had been like really hustling and grinding, thinking like, if I do more, I'll get to where I want to be, which was out of the classroom. And it didn't turn out to be that way. It turned out into a big season of burnout, and then it took a lot to get out of it, but once you are aware of it, I think that's when you can start to make shifts. So, you know, I started therapy, different stuff like that. But the main thing is I did take like a quick pause each day and I asked myself, like, how am I actually doing today? And then gave a true answer, didn't try to BS myself, and then try to do just one thing, even if it was tiny that day, to honor that answer.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you're a mom and you have to keep going and stuff, but if you can just do like one thing, like maybe it's get takeout for dinner instead of cook dinner, like
Yeah.
whatever it can be. That was huge because I just realized I was like checking boxes and I was in this like living on autopilot, I guess, and never really checking in with myself. So it was kind of like getting back to me, kind of coming home and like, how are you? I
Right.
haven't asked in a while. Here we are.
I love that because I think if we all checked in with ourselves a little more, a lot of people might realize, oh, I'm not doing as well as I thought, or
Hmm.
oh, I'm in survival mode more or longer than I thought, or whatever it
Hmm.
is. And I just got to be a guest on a podcast where I talked about like one of the practical things that I give moms to like, how do I find myself again? How do I feel normal? Is to like take 10 minutes of your day and listen to music that you like, not your kids' music, because we
Yes.
surround ourselves with kids' movies, kids' books, kids' TV shows, kids' music constantly. And it's like one little thing you can do is just remember the music that you love or
Hmm.
listen to an audiobook that you would enjoy.
Right.
And so I love that you're like, I just checked in with myself and was like, how are you doing today? But also that knowing those symptoms helps a lot, or
Hmm.
recognizing those signs of like this stuff doesn't interest me anymore, or I'm doom scrolling all the time, which a lot of people are doing right now just with everything going on in the world. It's like I want to stay informed, I want to know what's happening, but then I'm sucked into like
Yeah.
constant
Like
thing.
all information overload.
So even just yesterday taking space to like listen to that podcast was so refreshing, because even though it's like information overload, it's not the 6 second information overload of social media. It's like I am learning this skill right now in this thing.
Yes.
What exactly prompted the first podcast, like that you were like, I'm this is what was your first podcast about, like why that one?
Yeah, I can remember the exact day. My youngest was just born, my third baby, third and final baby, and
Okay.
we were on summer break from teaching. I still hadn't left the classroom yet, but in Minnesota, where I'm at, August is your last month of summer break. So you're going back to the classroom in September. And I just had been thinking about podcasting for probably about a year at that point. I like to share the timeline because I think people see social media and it's like this instant gratification, this instant
Yes.
success story. And I'm like, no, no, that's not how it happened for me. So I had already bought a microphone. I had already been, Googling constantly. And it was one nap period that I was holding her, rocking her, and she was asleep. And it just kind of was this inspired messy action where I was like,
Mm.
I need to go hit record because if I don't, I'm going to be in this exact same spot next year and I don't
Mhm.
want to be. I do not want to be. I will
Yeah.
not have time to learn this when I go back to the classroom. So it's now. I got to figure it out now. So I set her down, I hit record. I didn't know how to edit. I didn't know anything. And I just, for 6 minutes, you can still go listen to the episode. For 6 minutes, I talked about starting before you're ready because that was like
Okay.
what I was doing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love the episode. It's just raw and real. And you all start somewhere. And I learned that hitting record, if a podcast is on your list of things, like hitting record and stopping the endless Googling and researching that you could do, you're going to learn so much more by just doing that than,
Hmm.
but you feel like I got to learn one more thing. I got to learn one more thing. And yeah, it was that day was just like inspired, messy action. I'm a big believer in following it. And I'm glad I did.
I love that too. Yeah. As an author, like I think the blank page does that to a lot of people. So they're like, I'm just gonna go research some more. I'm just gonna go like if I research, it's fiction and nonfiction authors, we all do it. Like if I just go learn and I learned the same thing as an author, but also here on YouTube. Like if I just do the thing, even if it's cringe, even if nobody watches it, even if like, whatever it is, like if I do the thing, I'm gonna learn the thing. But if
Mm,
I just keep researching it, I'm gonna be
yes,
paralyzed out of action. And
for
then,
sure.
like you said, I'm gonna look back a year later and be like, man, what happened? And I've done that many times where I'm like, I want to do this thing. And then a year later, I'm still like, want to do the thing. And I just never did it because
Yeah.
for whatever reason, it's just easier not to.
Mhm. Yeah,
And then
definitely.
it's gone.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
yeah. So when you were trying all these different things, was there ever a moment where you were like, how do I like, was it always like needing to be financially contributing? Was it just wanting to take a break? Like, what were some of those things that went through your mind and your partner's mind as some of these
Mhm.
changes were happening?
Right. Those are hard conversations with my husband.
Of
He's
course.
very, yes, he's a risk averse. We got married and we're both teachers and we like planned to be teachers for life. And he still
Uh-huh.
is a kindergarten teacher. And so they were not easy conversations by any means. It was hard to find the words to help him understand why I wanted this so bad. Where we landed that first year was that I actually requested a leave of absence from my school and they granted it. And our youngest was still home from school. So it was like a kind of a gift to the family, like, let's slow down. Life is going fast. And so it was more so to stay home with her. Meanwhile, in my head, I'm like, okay, this is fantastic, but I need to figure, or I want to figure out how not to go back.
Mhm.
And it wasn't glamorous. There's highs and lows. There were, ups and downs, but yes, the pivots then came because I wanted to find something that didn't burn me out, that I liked
Mhm.
doing, that I could have time freedom and schedule things on my time so that I could, be the mom I wanted to be and be available to my own children. That was kind of like always been my driving factor, but also to contribute financially. That's
Right.
important to me. I love it if you're a stay-at-home mom and that's your job. I love that. That's a hard freaking job, but I know that like I want something else like more than that. So, yes, the financial piece was things, but there were like I said, there was furniture flipping, there was
Mhm.
accountability coaching, which I still think some of my services, like there's an accountability piece, which is really great. There was wellness things, the network marketing, and all of those
Mhm.
things, have since fell out of alignment. But I was kind of just having to trust one nudge after the other and giving myself permission to make those pivots because I think that's something we can get hung up on is like,
Mhm.
oh, you're just a flighty woman and how are you going to have success if you don't change, you're changing your mind again. Like, but the quicker we can get into alignment, and we know when we're out of alignment, like we're
Mhm.
procrastinating, we don't want to do it, we don't like it, or it's burning you out. Like if you can tap into that and then make decisions based on it, the quicker you can do that, you're going to end up where you're meant to be so much faster. So I
Right.
just want to give people permission to change their mind. A man, that's like a great quality in a man. He knows what he wants, but for whatever reason, like for us, it's just like, you
It's
know,
in there
it's
not.
a weakness. And no, claim it, change it, pivot as many times as you need.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point because it is that like, we do hear that like, oh, you're flighty, you can't make
Mhm.
up your mind, you don't know what you want, and it's like, no, I'm just trying to like build a life of alignment, which is a word that I've started using more in my marketing for like what I help moms do. Is this? is this intentional motherhood of like, how do we get aligned? How do we get intentional so that we're not burnt out, so that we have balance that works for our life? And because it really is about alignment, it's about what serves you and your family. Um, and I call myself a balance coach because it's accessible. That's because people are like, I want work-life balance. I want life balance. And it's like, what you really want is to find the rhythm that works for your life
Mhm.
because balance is never going to happen.
No.
But everyone, so I just use that word because that's what everyone else is using. And then once they're in my space, I'm like, but really, you need a rhythm that aligns with what you want,
Yes.
you know? I want to go back to something you said, though, that I work a lot with women on helping them grow into the mothers that they want to be that fits that rhythm and alignment. And that's what you said, like, so that I could be the mom I wanted to be.
Mhm.
How did you decide, or how did you like come to be like, this is the kind of mom I want to be, and I'm not doing that right now, or what I'm
Mhm.
doing is not serving that. So I'm going to make these changes. Like, how did you decide who that woman was and which changes you needed to make to be her?
It took a lot of inner work, therapy, thinking about my thinking, because I learned that I had stories that I decided that were other people's lives that I put on myself. Like, I feel
Yeah.
like I had an ideal childhood. So I associated a good mom with being exactly like my mom.
Okay.
And my mom can cook and bake and sew and craft and crochet, like anything under the sun, she can do it. She could
Right.
make you a Halloween costume. Like, I can't do that. I think it sounds terrible. I don't like cooking, stuff like that. So I had to unlearn and be able to kind of separate that things that society told me or things that I grew up learning and decided that I would put on myself doesn't have to be that. And so it kind of had to, again, coming back to home and to myself and getting to know myself as an adult woman and not a kid, and really thinking about what that meant. For me, things that are really important are that I don't have a household where we're just going, 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 and that there are breaks in there where we have downtime. And I also want to continue having family dinners and, doing things together and experiencing things together. But yeah, it had to do with unlearning and then also learning more about me and being okay with the answer too, because if it doesn't fit what we have kind of deemed in our head of like acceptable to society, then we got to allow that.
Yeah, I agree. Um, again, in this podcast I was in recently, I talked about how I used to really enjoy cooking, especially for me and my husband or just myself. And then when I became a mom, I was like, I don't want to do this
No.
every meal, every day for the rest of my life. But if you say that out loud, people are like, wow, that's terrible.
Or
But
like, you signed up
also,
for this. Oh, you signed
right,
up for
you
this.
signed up for it, you
They throw
decided to
it
be a
back.
mom. And I was like, I did, but I also didn't know that after having two back-to-back pregnancies, I was going to end up with a bunch of chronic illnesses because the trauma of two back-to-back pregnancies and birth, my body like couldn't
Mhm.
handle it. I didn't know that. Nobody knows that until it happens.
Right.
And so like it's like, but if we would talk about these things, then people be like, oh, okay, so it's not just me.
Yeah.
Or like, or if there's a mom out there who like never liked to cook in the first place, it's
Mm.
like, okay, so find a different way. Like, I
Yeah.
still cook most of our meals. My husband does cook some of them, but there was a time where we were either eating out a lot or my husband was cooking because I was bedridden or close
Yeah.
to it for so long. And luckily now I've learned and we found like the right like medications and the right like combination of things. But like you never know when that's going to hit your family. So you
Right.
have to be like flexible. But no mom knows that. No mom knows if she's going to get a special needs child or a child who just needs a little extra attention. No mom knows if her husband is going to lose his job or if, there's a lot of things we don't know. And then people are like, well, you chose this. And it's like, I didn't choose all of the things that went with it. Like I'm
Yeah.
doing the best I can. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's one of the annoying things that I hate hearing. Like we don't tell men that when they go to work. If
Nope.
they have a complaint about their job, if their boss makes them mad, if their coworker like frustrates them, if they can't like whatever it is, we don't tell men like, well, you chose this job. We tell moms that all the time.
We do. There's a different standard,
Yeah,
and yeah, it's not fair.
absolutely. So, what has life been like now that you are kind of in charge of? So, because one thing I'm trying to like for myself be more like it's okay to like do this is like to really focus on a niche of like moms that either work from home or run their own businesses of any kind. But I'm always afraid I'm going to alienate people. Like working moms aren't going to like me or stay-at-home moms aren't going to like me, and niching down is one of like my worst things. They tell you not to as a therapist in grad school,
Okay.
and then you get out of grad school and they're like you should niche down. It's like, well, I don't know. And so I have a hard time with that, but I am trying to like realize that the people that I talk to the most are moms who either work from home or run businesses. So how has that flexibility been like for you? What has that been like since you've like settled into this and all of that?
Right. Well, first of all, when you work from home or you run your own business, you could potentially be working around the clock. Like
Mhm.
what shut off is there unless you get really intentional about that? So for me, the rhythm that works right now is my kids get home from school at 3 o'clock, and I try to basically have work like wrapped up and kind of put away. Now, sometimes I pick it back up later once I get them into bed. And
Mhm.
sometimes I just go to bed too and start again in the morning. But having some boundaries and kind of going back to like why you're doing this in the first place. So my
Mhm.
kids are a big why. And being a present mom, being a mom that is rested, like those are important to me so that I can do all the fun stuff with the kids and I can go coach their elementary basketball teams, which I'm doing for the two oldest right now. Like to be able
Nice.
to do all that, I can't be running myself ragged. So having those boundaries and keeping to those when I can is huge. And also just knowing myself that I need rest and I need breaks because without it, we don't have the creativity or the energy to be in entrepreneurship because that's a very creative, energetic space. So learning that about myself and knowing like I do need to have that buffered in there and that it's important for my business and for being a mom and
Mhm.
it's not a lazy thing. I think taking some of that again other people's expectations of how it's supposed to look, even sometimes you might think your spouse thinks a certain thing or like I got to keep going or I got to keep the TV off. I got to,
Mhm.
earn my keep, that kind of
Right.
thing because
Yeah.
what will they think? But trying to kind of release yourself of those expectations too and just honor you and how you're
Mhm.
feeling is huge in how I can show up in business and in motherhood the way that I really want to.
Has that had a positive impact on like how your family runs, how you show up for your kids, how you
I think so. I can be at a lot more of their things and volunteering and, like I
Mhm.
said, coaching their sports teams and that type of thing that I would not have signed up for that. I wouldn't have signed up to help at Sunday school or teach their class.
Right.
I would not have signed up for that had I been still working my teaching job because I just didn't have the capacity or energy. So being able to be there in those aspects has been great. And then just
Mhm.
the pace of life that I can help our family have has also helped because I can go pick up the groceries or run our errands during the day. Whereas we just were rushing. We'd get done with work, we'd pick the kids up. Well, they'd be at
Mhm.
school with us, so they'd hop in the car and we'd zip over to the neighboring town to get our groceries and then zip back for an appointment and zip home to get them in the bath and back to bed. Like life was just on this super fast pace and we don't have that right now usually
Right.
because I can take over those things. So that was another piece of it that I've really liked that has felt good to just slow down. And when the kids are done with school, then it's like kind of just this calm time where I'm ready to help you with your homework. I'm not needing to have alone time and crash.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely impacted them.
I love that. Yeah, and I think that's one thing that I love working with moms on finding their particular rhythm and like figuring out those boundaries. Because one thing that I used to like be really like, it used to be really weird to me because like I love learning, I love researching, I love doing all that. And so, like, when everyone's having downtime at home and the kids are playing, and then that's what I'm doing, I know that most people be like, why are you still working? And it's like,
Mm.
but I'm not. I'm doing something I like. And it took me a long time to accept, like, this can be my hobby. It's okay. Like
Yes.
I have other hobbies that my kids see me doing, and my kids help me with chores around the house and things like that. And but like I was like, it's okay to have this as a hobby. And like if my kids are like, why are you working? I can be like, it's just I'm just doing something I like to do. And and then when they come around, like we put it away and we do other stuff. And I there's certain aspects where I learned that balance myself, but it does help you to be more there. Like going to my kids' field trips was like so great, but if I worked full time in a community mental health center, like I wouldn't be able to do that. And
Nope.
so like that was one of my favorite things from last fall was the pumpkin patch field
Yeah.
trips. And so
Right. And it's okay for them to see you work too. Like I
yeah.
have to communicate that sometimes. Like sometimes a call has to be in the evening or whatever it might be.
Mhm.
Like just
Or when it's a
communicating.
snow day from school.
Yes, yes. So it's like communicating to them like mom's working and you're gonna be okay. You're 9 and you're gonna be okay for this hour.
Right.
I'm in
Yeah.
the house too. Summers for us, that's another story. That's like navigating so much because of their summer rec schedules and then they're in the
Mhm.
house. And so my work time, basically I try to prep as many things. Like I try to prep podcast episodes and schedule them out and
Right.
really prep stuff so that I can work less, during that time because I want to go to their summer rec stuff. I want to take them to their baseball game, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So just preparing and trying to prep what you can, but having a little grace because it doesn't always pan out that way.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, those days are crazy. We had an entire week of like snow days and 6 days last week where it was just like, what do we do? What do we do? And like Monday, I literally rescheduled all my clients because my son was like having a day, and then I shared on social media. I ended up breaking down in my daughter's school parking lot. Like it was just one of those days. But you're
Yes.
right. It's so good for them to see us working also and to like
Mhm.
hold those boundaries too, because that way they know like okay, that's okay to do too, but then I know that mom is still going to be like there when that hour is over.
Right.
Like we're going to have those.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, anything else you would share for a mom who maybe especially a teacher or another mom working full time or a schedule that because a lot of teachers think, "Oh, if I have the same breaks as my kids, life's going to be great." If you have another teacher that like is burnt out or is like this isn't what I thought it was going to be now that I have kids, what would you tell them? What would you say to them?
One, that you're not alone and you're not crazy for feeling like this. And it's okay that teaching, you might still like to teach. I like to teach. And so it was like, so the answer is to leave it. There can be that confusion in there, but come back to yourself and get honest about what's the most important part here. And if it's your kids and, you know, staying out of burnout or whatever that is for you, that's okay. And know that as a mom, as a teacher, you have a ton of skills. So maybe even write them out. That's an activity I have people do is just like brain dump everything that you do in your classroom on a daily basis. I bet you have a list a mile long of all of the decisions you're making, the scheduling you're doing, the pivoting, the differentiation. All of those are skills. And then when you have that out in front of you, that's when you sort of kind of can give it a look and piece things together. Maybe you might see something where you're like, I like to write. Maybe copywriting is something I look at. We think there's nothing else you can do besides whatever we got our college degree in. And I think that might be our generation too, that we were taught like you need a degree to be able to do anything. And
Right.
really, there's so many things out there now, especially with doing things virtually and services you can provide.
Mhm.
You don't need any of that. You need experience and you need knowledge, and you can go get that, and you likely already have it. So don't discount and try to say, well, I can't do it. Maybe it's party planning. Like you plan a whole
Yeah.
day. I mean,
Because
like
you plan everything.
everything. Yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like we think that we don't have these skills, and that goes for like any women, but especially teachers, but we have
Mhm.
so many. Take a look at them. Maybe it's going to
Yeah.
lead you somewhere, or schedule a call with a coach or somebody or like a third party, because that's been really helpful in my journey too, because they
Mhm.
can see things so much clearer than we can when we're like so deep and close to it.
Yeah. Which is what I love to do. I love coaching women on finding
Yes.
their balance and boundaries. So if I could be one of those people, and that includes helping them decide if they need to transition in or out of a field. Like I help women with that all the time. But I also don't have all the skills, and you have one that I don't, which is helping people set up a podcast and things like that. So if people watch this and they're like, oh, I think I want to do that, I have something I want to share, how can they find you? Where can they reach you?
For sure. I'm over on Instagram and Threads the most, and it's just my name at Candace Dudley. I also have a website, CandaceDudley.com. So use my name and you'll be able to find me. And I have lots of either free downloadable things or mini small courses to like help you out. And then I also offer like one-on-one things too. So we'll make it happen. And it'll be great to just have another voice out there for us women to feel seen and heard and valued.
Yes, I love that. And all of those links will be in the description of the YouTube video. If this ever makes it to a podcast form, it'll be in the show
Yes,
notes.
love it.
But it will for sure be in the description of the YouTube video. So thank you so much for talking to me today and for joining me.
Oh
I
my
really
gosh.
appreciate it.
Thank you. This was so fun.